Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. Today I want to talk about everyone's favorite subject, which is backups. Or in Incus, we refer to that as the Incus export command. And so I've entitled this particular one, Incus Backup Bloat, and you'll see why here in just a few minutes. So when you execute an Incus export command, you're making a backup of either an Incus container or an Incus virtual machine. And the backup is created in a directory located in /var/lib/incus/backups, and that is the first step of an Incus export command. The backup is then copied, not moved to your current folder as the second step in the Incus export command. So I'm not sure why there are two copies, but clearly there are. So is your Incus server disk filling up? Well, if you use Lex Console and you delete a backup from the Lex Console GUI, it deletes it from both locations. So it sounds like Matthew Penning has already anticipated that. However, if you use the CLI, it's only going to create the file where you have it. If you delete it in your current working directory where you do the backup, it'll delete it from there, but you would have to go navigate to that folder I mentioned earlier in order to delete it from that location. So, however, the Incus export command seems to keep adding to /var/lib/incus/backups because out of sight is out of mind, and unless you're actually looking at that location, you're unaware that it is continuing to store backups there. So we're going to learn how to redirect the backup storage location from /var/lib/incus/backups by pointing it to a volume in a different storage pool. So this location could be on another disk or even an NFS mount or a CIF share on a NAS where perhaps you have more storage. So here we are in my Lex Console desktop instance, and you'll notice that I've got 2 containers and 4 virtual machines. So they're 2 relatively small containers. Let's just go into this Scotti-BYTE container here, and you'll notice I don't have any backups right now. So I'll go ahead and create a backup, and that will go ahead and create a backup, and we'll check back here when that is done. Once Lex Console indicates that the backup has completed, you'll see here under the status that it says that it is completed. Now, what that means is it means that it has stored the copy of the backup over in the /var/lib/incus/backups folder. And in fact, if we go into that folder and we go into instances and we go into Scotti-BYTE, there is that particular backup. And of course, I can list it by details. And it is a 4.5 gigabyte backup. So even though that backup is completed, if you move over to the right-hand side here, you have the option to export the backup. What exporting the backup means is it means putting it in the standard place where your backups are pointed to. And we talked about that on the backup storage for Lex Console video. So at this point, if I say export the backup and I say OK, it almost immediately will create a container up here. I may have to repaint this. And sure enough, it created a folder called Scotti-BYTE. And it is copying that backup into that folder. So if we do the command line command and do Lex or do a not Lex C, but if you do an Incus export does both of those steps at once. It puts the var lib Incus backups copy, and then it also puts a copy into wherever your default folder or default directory location is. So the problem is, even though we may be storing the data off in a different location, like in this particular case, we're storing it off on a NAS where I have lots of storage, the /var/lib/incus/backups location is generally wherever your Incus server is installed, and that will probably be utilizing storage that you would rather not be using. So we're going to talk about how to repoint that to another location. So let's take a look at this from the command prompt, and we're now in /var/lib/incus. And if we do an ls-al, you can see listed right at the top there is that backups folder. So let's cd into the backups folder and do another ls, and let's cd into instances, and let's do another ls. And there is the folders for each of the instances that have been backed up from this particular Incus server. So if we go into that snipe-it folder that we just backed up, and we do an ls in there, there's the tar.gz file that is being stored as part of the Incus file system. Just as a reminder, if we do an Incus storage list, you'll notice that we have the one default pool from Incus containers step by step, and it is a ZFS storage pool. So my proposal here will be to create another storage pool. I have another disk on this particular system, and it could just as well be a NFS mount, or it could be a location on a NAS accessed via, say, SMB or CIFS. So if we do a makedir on /MNT/Mondo Seagate, which is another drive on my system, I'm creating a folder over there called Incus-backups. When I have covered storage pools in the past, one of the storage pool types I talked about was a directory storage pool, which simply uses your native operating system to store the files. And that's what we're going to take advantage of this time by doing an Incus storage create. And I'm just going to call the name of this pool we're creating backup-pool. And then it will be of type directory, like I said, the native file system, and the source is going to be that folder that we just created in /MNT/Mondo Seagate /Incus-backups. Now that we've created the storage pool, if we go back and do an Incus storage list, you notice the second storage pool. In previous videos where I discussed storage pools, we learned that you can store container instances in storage pools, you can store profiles in storage pools, and you can store images in storage pools. Well, you can also store custom volumes in storage pools, and so we're going to create a custom volume that's called My Backups, and we're going to put it inside the backup-pool storage pool with an Incus storage volume create backup-pool my backups. And now we've created that custom volume. We can now move all those current backups from /var/lib/incus/backups over to this new custom volume in the new storage pool, which is on another disk, with this one simple command, incus config set storage.backups _ volume, where it is going to be pointing to backup-pool / my backups, which identifies that volume. So now it'll take quite a while to move that data over there, but also all future backups will now be pointed to the new location and will not use storage on the main Incus server disk. So now, after a varying amount of time, depending upon how many backup images you have, the process is finally completed, and I go ahead and do an ls-al on /var/lib/incus. And you'll notice up here that we have a symbolic link as indicated by the L in the first position up here. And backups is now pointing to /var/lib/incus/storage-pools/backup-pool/custom/default_my backups. Of course, we know the real location of that happens to be over in /mnt/mondo cgate incus_backups. And if I do a cd over to that location and do an ls, you'll see that we have a file structure that has been created over there in virtue of having moved the backup storage space. So now I can do a cd into the container folders, for example. And once I do that and do an ls, we see that there are no backups located in it. And that wasn't really the right place. So let's do a cd ... and do another ls. And let's cd into custom. And I believe this is a custom storage area, so that's where I expect to see it. And sure enough, if I now cd into default_my backups, which is the location you recognize from above, we will see that we have in here custom and instances. If we cd into instances and we do an ls, we now have a backup of desktop, desktop 2404, Snipe-IT, and Win11, which are the combination of Incus virtual machines and Incus containers that I previously performed backups on, and so they're located inside of this file structure. If we decide later on that we want to move the backups back to the default location on the Incus server, we can always issue the command incusconfig onset storage.backups_volume, and it will reverse the process and copy all of the data structures for those backups of your containers and your Incus virtual machines back to your Incus server disk. Now that the unset command has been completed, if we go back and do an ls-al on /var/lib/incus, you'll notice here that the backups folder is no longer a symbolic link. It now points just to where the data is on the local disk. And so likewise, if we cd over to /mnt/mondo cgate /incus-backups, which is where the volume was located, and we do an ls, you'll see that the folders still exist here. But now if we cd down into containers, I don't remember if this is where I was last time. Nope, that's not where I was last time. If I cd into custom, I think all these folders, there we go, and cd into default _my backups, and we do an ls, we're going to see that all the files have been moved back, so nothing is over here. As a little bit of a review, remember that we also have the command incus image list, and every time we create a new container, we create a container from an image. And that can either be a downloaded image or it can be a custom image, as in the case of this one named Ubuntu-2404-Docker and this one named Ubuntu Docker Scott. Just like we were able to move the backups to another location on another storage pool in volume, we can use the same technique here with a slightly different configuration option with an Incus config set storage.images_volume, and in this case I can send it over to the same place, which is backup-pool/my backups, my backups being the volume, and backup-pool being the storage pool on the other disk. I'm not going to move my images over to the other storage pool in the My Backups volume, but instead I'm going to make believe that I did, and I'm going to show you the command to undo that, which is Incus config unset storage.images underbar volume. And in this case, since it didn't have anything to do, the command came back immediately. So part of the reason why you might want to move your backups and you might want to move your images is to simply free up space on your Incus server disk. Since we've unset our storage backup location and our image backup location, we can do an Incus storage list, and it says that the backup pool is still used by one object. And the way we see what that object is by doing an Incus storage volume list on backup-pool, and you see that it's being used by My Backups, which is the custom volume. And in order to delete that custom volume, we can execute the command Incus storage volume rm backup-pool my backups. And then it says the storage volume is deleted. If we look at Incus storage volume list on backup pool, you can see that there are no volumes in it. And then likewise, if we go back and do an Incus storage list, it says that backup pool has 0 items in it. So you can't delete a data structure as long as the data structure still has anything inside of it. But at this point, we can delete our storage pool if we don't need it any longer, and we can do that with an Incus storage delete backup-pool. And now if we do an Incus storage list, we're back to just the default ZFS pool that we created in Incus containers step by step. And now finally that we've deleted the storage pool, if we do an ls on /mnt /mondo seagate /incus backups, that was the mount point for our directory-based storage pool that we had created and just deleted. So if we do an ls on that, of course, we don't have anything in it anymore. And we could, of course, also delete the directory mount point if desired. So in summary, I'm not really sure I understand why the Incus container export commands are stored in 2 locations. I have provided one possible solution to store this data in another location to save space on your Incus server. And the storage.backups underbar volume location can be changed, and it moves all existing data to the new volume and provides a logical link to the new volume location. And it's also possible to repoint the location for your custom images to save additional space as well. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time.